right. All right, we are officially live.
Yeah, buddy.
To the two people probably watching and the millions at home that might watch it later.
Millions. I like
Welcome,
that.
my main man, Anthony A. Perez. We've been doing this for like a couple of years now, right? This
Yeah,
whole
since
tit for
beginning
tat thing.
pandemic. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
been a
yeah.
while. It's crazy to think about, man. I think like I can't remember what the first one I did for you was, but I think the first one we did on my channel was Dragon Wars.
Dragon Wars, yeah. I
Right.
think I had you watch what did I have you watch?
I can't remember if it was Do the Right Thing was the first one, or there was something. There may have been something. It may have been that Boomerang. Maybe it was Boomerang. I'm not sure.
It might have been Do the Right Things. I know the first few I gave you was Do the Right Thing, New Jack City,
Right.
and I think Minister Society. I think those are the first few I think I gave you.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah, all good movies for sure. And Do the Right Thing is the one that I would say that the first time I watched it and I reviewed it, I was a little bit like mixed on it. But as I've sat with it longer, it's stayed more positive in my head, especially compared to some of the other stinkers that you've sent me, like Foxy
yeah.
Brown and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, those are the blaxploitation joints, man. But Spike has such a unique way of filmmaking where, the first time you watch his movies, you'd be like, that's kind of weird. But yeah, the more you watch it, the more you realize what he's trying to say and how he executes his his films. You're like, damn, that was kind of genius.
Right.
That's why I was hoping you could find Bamboozled, but for some reason it's not on any streaming platform. It's like that movie is very hard to find. Yeah, Bamboozled.
I almost forget. When did you ask me that one?
No, this was like early. I think this is like right after Do the Right Thing. I was like,
Gotcha.
yeah, you should
I
check
mean, we
out
could try it.
Bamboozled.
We could try it again. It's got to be on something now.
Well, they just released it on 4K Blu-ray, so I don't know.
Bamboozled. I almost don't remember you asking me to do that one, but I mean, it was so long ago. It says it's on Apple TV right now and Redbox to rent, so we could still do it if we wanted to.
You just have to pay for it. Ain't that some shit? All the black movies you gotta pay for.
Right. I think there was one other one.
shame.
There was a James Earl Jones one that we struggled to find at one point. It started with
Claudine.
Claudine, right,
yeah.
right. That was also like not on anything at the time, or like you had to pay for a subscription service or something to get in there.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, it is stupid, and that's why people always ask me why I buy physical copies of movies a lot of times. And for me, it's specifically like very specifically smaller films. Like I ain't out there like I stopped collecting like MCU movies and stuff like that a while ago, just because I know 100% it's gonna be on Disney Plus. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like there's certain things that like I don't really rush out and get Disney Blu-rays and shit like that anymore, because it's all gonna be in one place for the most part. You know. But then there's things like the horror franchises that we love, like the Nightmare on Elm Streets and the Freddy, the Jasons, the Chuckies. Like those things are so scattered around, and maybe you can't, maybe like all of them are on one place and then a couple are scattered around, or maybe one or two aren't on anything at all. So for those, I always try to find like the Blu-ray bundles where you can just get the set, because man, it just sucks when you're trying to watch like through a series or something and you just can't find it somewhere.
You can't find it, yeah. Because I remember I was getting on Darnell about not seeing he had never seen Predator, so I was like, okay, well, after you check out Predator, check out Aliens. And Aliens is a very popular movie. One of James Cameron's best, and once again, you have to pay to rent it. You have to pay to watch it.
Right. And see, that's funny enough. That's one of the last Blu-ray bundles I got. Like the entire set they had. It was pretty affordable too. It was like $25, $30, something like that. And it was like every single Alien movie, including Prometheus and Alien Covenant. Even though Alien Covenant, I can take it or leave it, with that one.
Yeah, right. Oh my God.
I see Blacktastic come in with a hot take. So funny enough, I was watching this movie thinking, man, is my opinion of this movie gonna break Blacktastic's heart? But I guess not.
Yeah. Okay, I hope so. I just want to give a shout out to Jacob real quick. Yeah, we about to get into this shit. One of my earliest reviews on the channel, one of the most watched videos, and so many comments. Different. Okay, I gotta check out that review, man.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that he had reviewed it on the channel. I gotta check that out.
Yeah, it was boring. Thought the main character was horribly unlikable, to where it was hard getting invested in the story. Oh my goodness. Top 3 from Singleton and Rosewood. Okay, Boys in the Hood and Higher Learning. Good picks. What? Almost walked out. Never liked the movie. Okay, or I'm gonna get this trailer out the way, bro. I got a little trailer I'm gonna play. We about to get into this, man.
Let's do
This
it.
this is crazy. Where we at? Yeah, man, I feel like doing a quick walk, man. Shit, West Side. All right, so we're talking Baby Boy. This is the third of the John Singleton Hood trilogy. So Boys in the Hood was first, then the very mediocre but yet memorable Poetic Justice, and now this is the last one. Baby Boy came out in the summer of 2001. Saw this at the cinema with my peoples, and I was living in Seattle at the time. I had braids and shit. And
I need pictures of that.
Yeah, I gotta dig up some pictures. But I had a fro, and then when I did have the fro, it was braided up and everything. So
that's dope.
Yeah. Dope. So I'm just kind of surprised at some of the opinions of this movie. So Jacobs found it very boring. Black Tastic said he almost walked out on it. So Perez, I'm gonna get your take on this. Baby Boy.
Like, so yeah, I went into it, man, like totally open as I usually do. Saw that John Singleton was the director. I'd actually never heard of this movie. When you sent me the name of it, or when you said it on the last stream, I kind of thought it was a funny name. But I was like, all right, let me see what this is all about. And so here's my main takeaway from the movie. I think it's about half an hour too long. I think that for me, it's well shot. I watching a lot of these hood films that you've had me watch, I've like, and I grew up watching a lot of them myself, or like, some of the more popular ones like Friday and stuff like that. But Boys in the Hood, like I've already seen some of those in the past. So I can definitely always dive into a good like hood film. And for me, this movie had some really real stuff in there, some really real takeaways, some stuff that I thought was really real, with the central thing being, just the heartbreaking nature and kind of path that a young man will go on if he's growing up in an area built with a lot of, poverty, and there's a lot of the crime and stuff like that. And then he doesn't have a father figure. You know what I mean? He don't have the father figure. He don't have somebody to kind of guide him in a path, give him some sort of, some sort of man to kind of look up to, and ultimately creates, this baby boy, this person who's like, he thinks he's got things a lot better than he does. He thinks he's got things figured out. He thinks that he's way more adult than he is. And he's ultimately just a punk ass kid, with no real life experience. But he's walking around thinking he's the big shit, and he has nothing to his name. You know what I mean? And so you got this good message here about how that can kind of trickle down into creating this person that has this toxic lifestyle. But then I think this kind of started to lose its way at times, because you feel, for me at least, that it's at a certain point like about this guy having to man up and learn to be a man for the woman in his life, for his own mama, for himself, all this kind of stuff. But man, the relationship between Tyrese's character and Taraji's character, just so toxic, man. It was horrible. Like, and in the end, when they're together, she's back with them and all this stuff, I was just thinking, man, I didn't care anymore, because the relationship was so toxic. The random Snoop Dogg character that just kind of swoops in there to kind of be an antagonist for a little bit just felt so pointless, really. You know what I mean? That was a whole another level of just toxic. There was some really uncomfortable scenes in this movie, you know what I mean? Like where he first hit her character, you know what I mean? And she hits him and he hits her. And then he just starts like, giving her head to try to like make the moment right, and she's like crying, and like I was watching with the whole movie with my fiance, and she was just like, this is just so uncomfortable to watch, and so you think that there's going to be this real big payoff for the characters as time goes on, in this direction of like, like something in the sense that like they were going to both have some sort of growth, that maybe he would realize that he needs to be better, you know what I mean, and all this kind of stuff, and that she realizes that she doesn't need a man like Jody, you know what I mean. But at the end of the day, they just get back together. And so I think it just kind of undercuts some of those messages for me. I think my favorite part of the movie, I'll say, was Ving Rhames, without a doubt. He was hilarious, but also really compelling in the role. And I liked what they did with his character in the end. You know what I mean? Like, he had this guy come in, and, you know, he had his own fuck ups too, but he set, you know, Tyrese's character, Jody, he set him straight, you know, to an extent. But then he has this nice, like, actual, like, almost like father moment at the end when he takes the gun from him, you know.
Right.
So I think that there's things about the movie that worked a lot in the performances. I thought it was well shot. I enjoyed the music of the film. And I enjoyed the message they were going for. I just think that the movie at some points is just so long that it undercuts itself. And then there's things you think about. There's like random scenes, like when he, you know, gets like he gets jumped by the group of kids, and he goes with his friend to go like whoop their ass and stuff. It just felt like certain things.
That was funny, man.
It's funny. It was funny to an extent, but at a certain point, because the movie sometimes felt like it was so serious, that it was trying to lean into like trying to tell a message about like this fucked up situation of this kid growing up with no dad, and like he's just like kind of running his life amok. Then you'd have stuff like that is just like, what I don't even know what this is in this movie for. So that's where I think the movie was just a little too long, in my opinion. I felt like it was just kind of going in 15 different directions at times, but I liked the performances. And I like the message, and I'm always open to seeing, like, some people don't like movies where the main character or the characters are unlikable. I'm okay with that as long as there's something to take from it, you know, like Scarface. You know, we recently did Scarface, and that's another one. Like, Tony Montana is not really like a likable guy, you know. He's likable because of how interesting he is, you know, as a character to watch. Same with like the Godfather movies. Like, those characters are interesting to watch. They're not necessarily like likable people. Like, you don't want to go like have a burger with these people, you know. But yeah, you know, it kind of, that's just how I felt. Was just like this torn feeling of like, I like these characters at times, but then I'm just like, I hate you because you're just toxic and you're giving into the same things that are your issues. And in the end, it just doesn't feel like there's like a lot to take from it. Like, I'm not necessarily thrilled at the end when the nice little, you know, happy-go-lucky music that Jody got back together with his girl. Like, I just felt, and then as soon as the movie ended, my fiance's like, well, what about the other baby mama? Which they completely like don't
Peanut.
Peanut. So it felt like very messy, man. I felt like there was a good movie in there, but in the end, you know, on Letterboxd, I gave it a 2.5 star, and I think a lot of that for me just came down to like a lot of those pieces not really connecting. What are your thoughts on this movie?
You know what, that's a fair assessment, man. Just hearing you out, that is a fair assessment, and I totally get it. Yeah, as far as Jody, like, to me, he always reminded me of like the De Niro character in Raging Bull, you know, kind of like an asshole, but, you know, and not really likable, but it's like you just want to see his story unfold, you know what I'm saying? Because he's even though he's not likable, but he's an interesting character, and I know dudes like that. I was kind of like that, you know, minus the baby mamas, you know what I'm saying? Thank God I only got one. But I really love the movie, man. But I understand what you're saying, though, because it's trying to tell a serious story, but then it kind of goes the comedic route, which to me works a lot because the comedic stuff is like stuff that actually happens. Like, so the whole thing about him getting jumped by these little niggas, you know, that happened to a friend of mine. Like, I had a friend of mine, he's a local rapper, you know, big in the streets. Everybody knows him. He has a reputation, but then he had to pack up and move to Tampa because, you know, he was kind of feeling himself. He's like, man, I'm that nigga. And he got jumped by some teenagers. They beat his ass. And now the word is, man, Melvin got whooped by some little niggas, man. Some little niggas. And he had to leave. So I know that scene.
Right.
Now, the whole relationship with Yvette and Jody, that also I've witnessed, okay? I had neighbors next door that's all they did. They fought and they fucked. That's it, you know. If he wasn't calling her a dumbass bitch, he was, you know, screwing her brains out. So it's toxic, but I know it. So I guess to me, the authenticity of what happened in this movie is what really gripped me, right? But if I'm seeing it through the lens of like a film critic like yourself, if I'm seeing it through that lens, I would probably totally agree with you, you know, because sometimes the script is kind of a mess, you know. The narrative is not really that tight, but just the situations that happen, I'm like, damn, I know this world. I live this world, you know.
Which I could definitely see when I'm watching the movie. Like, that's the one thing that I think that kept me involved in it and engaged in it, was that if everything felt real, like these relationships feel realistic, you know, like this kind of The fact that somebody like what's it called? Somebody like Snoop Dogg's character can go to jail and have this girl that he had before and kind of just show up and kind of like the girl kind of be okay with it, you know what I mean? And kind of like, I get that relationships and like toxic stuff like that, especially like again in places with like where there's a lot of crime, a lot of violence, these highly emotional individuals who like, you know, it's just like there's people like that, you know what I mean? Like there are people, I see it all the time too, like these couples that you look at them and you're just like, how the fuck do
how
you
are they
even,
still
like,
together? I'm Perez will tell you,
how
like
do you live a life?
there be times I'll be sitting there watching, you know, whatever, eating a bowl of cinnamon toast crunch, and then I just hear, "Them will knock your ass out." Oh my God, what's wrong with you? You crazy, bitch! I'll kill you, motherfucker. Man, kill me, then, nigga, kill me. And I'm just sitting there like, dude, don't kill her, don't do it. You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, it's crazy, man. It's so I do agree on that level, you know, and I do agree. Like, you know, I was texting you while I was watching the movie at one point, and you were saying that like, you know, you had those instances even like with your mom where she'd like, you know, be dating some thug, you know, dude that come in and you wouldn't be real thrilled about that, and you kind of feel like this. And I'm sure like so for me, never thankfully had a situation where my mom was dating like necessarily a thug, but like my mom dated guys that, you know, would live with us for periods of time when I was a kid that I didn't like, or, you know, they kind of changed the dynamic of the house and things changed, you know what I mean? And, you know, most of those guys, I mean, all those guys are gone now. Like none of them are around, but some of them, you know, put a fright in my soul, and some of them, you know, were just annoying. But, you know, I actually, that's why I like the Ving Rhames thing, because he started off as this massive nuisance. And as an audience member, I feel like that was one of the first times that you as an audience member were able to get on Jody's side, because beforehand, Jody was just such a shithead. You know what I mean? He's cheating on his girl. He can't like keep himself straight. You know, he's doing the wrong things. He's indulging in all the wrong things and all the childish things. And then Ving Rhames' character here comes and shakes up his world. And again, I don't necessarily agree with everything Ving Rhames doing, like choking him out and shit. But like,
that was hilarious.
Know, right. But at the same time, it really did add to that character development at the end when he does take when he takes the gun from him, because I felt like the one moment in the movie where I actually have like an emotional internal reaction of like, I'm happy to see where Jody's kind of come, you know, as far as how far he's come, would be at the end when he's leaving his mom's house and he tells Ving Rhames' character, you know, to keep his mom happy, you know what I mean? And like that exchange between the two of them as he's walking to his car was, for me, it was like the real growth of the movie. That's why I felt weird when the movie ends with Jody and Yvette getting back together, because I'm just like, I felt bad for Yvette the entire movie, and I have no faith that Jody's just going to be like substantially better for her moving forward just because of this one day. You know what I mean? At least that's just how I felt about his character. And so for me, as far as the comedy, the comedy that worked the best in the movie is when fucking we got Ving Rhames doing like, you know, mega squats fucking Jody's mom in the room. That for me had me and my fiance dying of laughter. You know, him walking around the house with like, or like him like making breakfast with his ass cheeks out, you know, stuff like that for me comedically is what worked the most. Because I can kind of see something like that happening. But even though a lot of the film felt realistic, again, I just feel like a lot of the narrative is what, like, it just kept undercutting itself. You know what I mean? When I felt like it was trying to get serious, it's like, oh, maybe that's not supposed to be taken. So maybe we're not supposed to think this is serious. And then it gets serious. And then it have weird scenes where we got Tyrese inside the womb and like this weird like thing. You know what I mean? It just, there were so many moments. I think Singleton had a lot of ideas for the movie, and he slammed them all together, and some of it just didn't work.
That's funny. That's kind of how I felt about Violent Night. I'm like, damn, are we supposed to take this seriously or what the fuck?
See, but that one for me was like a little bit more of like just like a more of a like action comedy. Like, you know what I mean? Like I was able to kind of lean into that as like a action comedy for sure.
All right, well, I'm gonna catch up on some of the comments here real quick. Best thing about the movie was filmed down the street from my grandmother's house in LA. Okay. Hey, Swoop Dog, really? Jody? This Jody that got my boo pregnant? Living at his mama's house like a little boy? Punk, you a bitch. So, exploitation was good, homie. Favorite Tyrese performance is that one, because I'm not a fan of Tyrese at all.
Right. You know, I don't know that I don't know that I've ever seen Tyrese in something that I'm like, wow, that was a performance that really blew me away. I guess this is like, that's the thing with this movie too. There were some over dramatic performances. I thought that you can tell that John Singleton like asked them to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, when I really for a second I thought he really got shot up when Snoop Dogg came up
Yes,
and shot up
yes.
at the house, and that was
No,
just I was laughing my ass off because of the over dramatic, just like like with the music and everything. It was just so cheese. So I don't know. I guess I like Tyrese in like the Fast and the Furious movies, or I even liked him in like Transformers or whatever. Like I haven't seen
yeah.
too much of him like giving me a mind blowing performance, but I don't mind seeing him pop up.
But bro, funny story. Okay, so I went to the movies with my little brother, and my little sister to go see that, right? And my sister started crying when that scene happened, right? So, but even when I first watched, I said something just off about. Nah, I don't think this is happening, because I'm
Right.
like, this is like Boys in the Hood and Menace to Society all over again. Why is he really doing this? And my sister's like, no, Jody, oh God. And then when he got up, and she was like, I said, yeah, he got your ass.
Right. Yeah. And that for me, I was thinking to myself, I actually thought it was gonna be interesting because the difference between the two of our viewings is that you watched it the first time in the theater, like
Mhm.
you can't pull up to see how much longer is in the film. I
Right.
had just paused the movie a little bit before to go to the bathroom or something like that, and saw that there was still like an hour and some change left or something, or like
Really?
maybe like 40 minutes. So when I see him getting busted, like getting shot, I'm like, this is really taking a weird turn. Like I didn't expect this man to be shot up for the last half of the movie, but then of
Yeah.
course it turns out to not be real.
Yeah, nah, definitely, man. Yeah, and then the whole thing with Melvin was yeah, so exploitation reviews, yeah, he kind of dug it. Incredible. But yeah, the thing with Melvin, yeah, I was there because my mom had a few boyfriends that I just fucking detested. And so when Jody walks in and he sees him in the kitchen making breakfast, I'm like, yo, that kind of happened to me, except dude wasn't naked. But it's like, okay, my father just left like maybe a few weeks ago, right? And my father's 5'8", about your color, Perez. Okay, he can pass for Hispanic. And I wake up in the middle of the night, like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I see this 6'2" dark Mandingo looking motherfucker with a big ass afro in his tidy whities, pigeon toed, walking to the damn bathroom. The bathroom's right by my room. So I see his door. I said, what the fuck is that? So I get under the covers like, what the hell? And the next day I'm like, Mom, who the hell is that? Oh, that ain't nobody. Don't worry about him. He just a friend. Just a friend? This dude's walking around naked, going to the bathroom. Yeah,
Right.
so I was there, man. Oh, these motherfucking bots. Damn.
Yeah, I was about to tell you. I just saw that pop up.
You know what?
Hot photos of my sister. Gotta love it.
Yeah, like somebody like. Do people actually? I wonder if people actually click on that. Like, oh, let me see what he's talking about.
I'm sure, honestly, the sad reality is there's probably people who see stuff like that and they think, yep,
And they still click
absolutely.
on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Those are the same people who get like a text that says like your Amazon package has not been like
Mm-hmm.
is in limbo. Click this to get your. I'm like thinking, oh man, I didn't even
Right.
order one, but let me check it. You know what I mean? Like I don't get people like
Yeah.
that.
But yeah, but I want to talk about Jody's arc. So Jody's arc is, I mean, it's a small arc, but it's still an arc. You know what I'm saying? So I see what you're talking about, but it's little things like, for example, he never wanted to leave the house. So he wanted to be with Yvette and everything and have, he wanted to marry her and all this stuff. But it's like, dude, you're living at home with your mom. And she would
Right.
tell him, it's like, dude, you live with your mom. Like, what? And then he would get mad at her. So something as simple as that. And then by the end, he has a key. He moved in with her. So that's like a big sign of commitment when you actually take that step and move out your mama's house and move in with her. It's like, okay, he's serious now, But I mean, it's not like a full 180 turn where he goes from the dark side to now he's a Jedi or nothing like that. But it's like it's the beginning of something that, okay, he's finally starting to man the fuck up. Then 5 years from now, he's going to be a much better person. But I feel like the end of the movie was just the start of his real growth as a man.
Right.
Like he finally stood up to, he stood up to the guy that, the Rodney character, Snoop, and had a conversation with Melvin where he got knocked the fuck out. Like that's one of those moments where he got hit so hard his mama felt it. If you go back and watch that scene, when Melvin hits him, the mama like jumps back and she falls back. That's how hard he hit his ass.
Right.
So,
And that's one of those. That's
huh?
where it got weird for me though with his character Jody, is that he's just like I like what you're saying, right, about the
Yeah.
key and all this kind of stuff, because like
Mhm.
I just almost wish that they had cut the stuff with Snoop Dogg, and that
Yeah.
like maybe Yvette had gone and like actually started living her life and made
Mhm.
him feel partially like at least how he had made her feel. Because then I feel like it would have given me a little bit more feeling to be like, all right, like Jody's like he got a taste of his own medicine, you know what I mean, and got a taste of what like maybe Yvette did go out there and start seeing other men, you know what I mean? Maybe she did go out there and like, you know, kind of like start neglecting him, stuff like that. But this guy was like hitting her and like cheating on her left and right and all this stuff. And then, you know, then we see this moment where she comes outside her job and she's waiting for him to pull up, you know what I mean? She's got the car keys in her bag and she just has this moment of like, damn, he would have been picking me up. Yeah, and he would have been cheating on you right beforehand and beating your ass. So it's just kind of like a.
That's true. That's true.
It's
but
tough. I really wish that their relationship had worked for me more in the end, and that he had learned a bigger lesson. Because I just think that Yvette, because like she was a nice character. She had her own problems for sure.
Right.
She definitely didn't deserve like to even be with Jody in the end. I'm glad to see he changed, but it just felt like, man, this guy's still a piece of shit.
Still, yeah. But hey, once again, I mean, yeah, you know what? And I think that probably would have made a better movie if they played that out like the way you said, like she just goes and does her thing, and he's like, "Wait a minute, what you doing? You know, like I'm living. You know, you ain't trying to do nothing. Yeah, perfect." Unfortunately, I know women like that. I know women like that, like Perez. You can body slam them, clothesline them, bust they shit. You know what I'm saying? And then they sit there with a bloody nose talking about, "But I love him. I don't want nobody else but him." You know. Yeah, I've even, I was even a rebound. You know, I told this story so many times. I was a rebound for somebody that was in a toxic situation, couldn't leave the dude alone. Dude even put her in jail. You know what I'm saying? And here I was to pick up the pieces, trying to, be the opposite of what he was. And it was like, yeah, but nah, I really love him though. Have at it. Right. Take some more of those light slams if you want to. Be my guest. I know women like Yvette. Yeah.
Right. I mean, no, it definitely exists out there. So, and then we also saw it in Yvette's friend that she was having her phone calls with over the course of the movie. You know what I mean? Like there was definitely there's a lot of realism there for sure.
Right.
I think that's where the movie for me, like I was thinking, man, for a 2-hour movie, it is a fucking full 2-hour movie, which, like I watch movies like that any time of the day.
Right.
But for a 2-hour movie, I'm just thinking like, all right, we probably could have shrunk this down to 11
to
like an hour,
a little fat off, yeah.
Right, and we would have probably still come to the same conclusion. You know what I mean? We would have come to the same middle ground of Jody kind of making some life changes, but not that many.
Yeah, and you know what? And as unlikable as Jody is, you look at his homeboy, Sweet Pea. P is even worse. P not only he's living with his woman's mama. You know what I'm saying? Right. And he calls himself running the house, barking out commands, but bro, you don't even have a job.
Right.
You have nothing. You're sitting there playing the PlayStation, talking shit like, hey, you talking back to me? That's how you talk back to your man? So he makes Jody look like a really good person, because P he's a real asshole. But at the same time, this kind of an arc to him too, because he realizes like, damn, my life is messed up. He starts going the religious route where he wants to be a Christian. But still, as a Christian, he's still cursing while he prays.
Right. That praying scene was one of the funniest scenes in the movie, where they get down to pray. Like, and his character was another one I was torn on, because he's funny and he added a lot of like. If anything, I felt like he was just kind of like that anchor, kind of holding Jody back a little bit. At least that's what it felt like at the beginning. But in the end, he helps him out. But then it's kind of like that character's just kind of there, and like. It doesn't really feel like a lot of characters grow in the movie, which is where I think I struggled the most.
That's where,
there's so much random stuff that like I was just sitting here talking about it. I had almost forgotten that there's like 15-20 minutes dedicated to Jody like selling stolen clothes. You know what I mean? So there's just so many things about this movie that I'm just like, there was a lot of concepts, and I think that Singleton just had the chance to throw it in. Speaking of which, when he first is on that street with his buddy, and they're like they're thinking of the idea to start selling stuff on the streets like that.
Right.
I believe there's a cameo from Singleton in there, right?
He's one of the guys. Yeah, he was selling DVDs. He was selling bootleg DVDs. Yeah.
Right, which I thought was funny. So I thought that was cool to see. So like as a fan of a lot of other Singleton films that I've seen, like I could see his artistry in this movie.
Right.
For me, it came down to the story. Just like it did not like it just didn't sit with me right. You know what I mean? Like I just at the end, I was just like. Like there's nothing to take away. There's nothing that I'm like ever like I want to revisit this movie,
right?
Just because of the way that the story played out.
Yeah, of course, and it didn't give you that gut punch like Boys in the Hood did. Like by the time
Right.
you was finished with Boys in the Hood, you just felt like, wow, what the fuck just happened to my life, man? You know,
Right.
just so many emotions watching that movie. Where in this one, to me, Baby Boy's a comedy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, we're talking about the serious stuff that's in the movie, but I see it as a comedy because when I watch it from beginning to end, bro, I'm laughing. Like, there's just so many memorable, funny scenes from Jody getting choked out, getting knocked out, you know, even that scene where you hit Yvette. Now, mind you, I don't condone putting hands on women at all. I'm sorry, I don't. But
Right.
I laugh because, like I said, I've seen these things. So when she's hitting him and he's telling her, "Don't put your hands on me," like stop hitting me, and she keeps like, Jody, I'm sick of your shit, and he just like, I told you about putting your hand. Oh shit, yeah. Witnessed it. I mean, seen it. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
she's not gonna watch this, but you remember Cousin China, right? I got a story, y'all.
Right.
She's gonna kill me for this, but I don't care. This is her punishment for abandoning my channel. So Cousin China had a situation like that where she was fighting with her boyfriend, and the dude kept telling her, China, don't put your hands on me. And she's like, nah, nigga, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? You ain't gonna do nothing. And he's like walking away from her, and she's like grabbing his shirt and ripping his shirt and hitting him from behind. So he once warning before destruction. One more time, he says, China, stop putting your hands on me. Nah, nigga, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? He turns around and grabs her with both hands by the throat. I told you about putting your fucking hands on me. Okay.
Oh,
yeah, lets her go. Yeah, she runs the room and closes the door. She's gonna kill me if I know her. If she know I told you this, man. But yeah. So I've seen.
Well, that's definitely fucked up. That's definitely fucked up. But yeah, I mean, the reality of the situation is that there's a lot of people. There's a lot of situations like that, man. Yeah, I read that comment a second ago. Yeah, I think that there's. I think that that's definitely the situation.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it comes too from the sad reality is like rough neighborhoods. I grew up in some rough parts of
Right.
Miami, down in Miami where I grew up. Like I like plenty of rough situation, rough people, rough places. I'm grateful that I had a good like family life and a good like structure within that. But I also have a lot of peers that I grew up with that were living in a similar area that just grew up to be a lot more, emotionally reactive people that didn't really have the best role models in their life and stuff like that. I was also raised in religion, so I feel like that kind of structured me a little bit more.
Right.
Even though I don't follow that today, but the reality is, yeah, man, and there's a lot of men and women that just get lost in, growing up in a world that a lot of times in the rough neighborhoods, there's this stigma. You got to be tough. You know what I mean? You got to be just as rough as the neighborhood. So it creates a bunch of these rough people who don't really grow up with as much like love and self-love as they should, So sad reality is there's a lot of men and women who become in relationships with really toxic people, really like not only physically but also mentally abusive,
mentally, psychologically, yeah.
Right. That a lot of that just comes from like lack of self-esteem, you know what I mean, and growing up in a place where they didn't have like that nice foundation of like a strong family dynamic, you know what I mean? Like my parents were divorced, but thankfully I feel like I had still two loving parents, even if they were divorced, and I was able to kind of like, there was things I think I suffered from in terms of like things I didn't learn from just being a man in like a loving relationship with like a husband and wife because my parents were divorced. But I at least had a good foundation of good people to kind of help me be able to figure that out as I got older and as I'm in my own relationship now. But at the same time, I know friends who had divorced parents or didn't have their dad around or didn't have the mom or whatever the case may be that grew up in rough parts and they just grew up to try to be rough people that ultimately are just they don't make full decisions for themselves sometimes. They get like lost in their own emotions, their own sadness. They let their emotions be dictated by somebody else. You know what I mean? They let their life be dictated by somebody else. And then they get to a point where they think, well, I got 2 kids with this person and we had them when we were teenagers. I don't know anything else. And they it's one of those things where they kind of subject themselves at a certain point to people like that because they almost believe within themselves that they can't do better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least
Well,
that's my opinion.
well, I mean, that saying, it takes a village. It takes a village to raise a child. You know what I'm saying? And I always feel like, I mean, and this is no diss to single mothers. You know what I'm saying? But a woman can't teach a boy how to be a man. You know what I'm saying? Only a man can teach a boy how to be a man. I mean, but eventually even with single moms, the boy does grow up and become a man regardless whether they like it or not. But like I'm saying, like being like a responsible man, like he was saying, like how to be a husband and an adult and all that stuff, and a father. You know what I mean? It takes a man to teach that. You know what I'm saying? Just like at the same time, I can't teach my daughter how to be a woman. That's her mother's job. So it does take a village, and with this movie, you see that because Jody was raised by his mom, and that's it. You know what I mean? And so when Melvin comes along, it's like, damn, there's a man here. Like I thought I was the man of the house, but then he realizes that he's not. Not only is he not a man, but he's not the man. And Melvin has to school him, and he doesn't like that because I mean, you can kind of like Melvin kind of comes across as an antagonist, but he's not because throughout the movie he's trying to school Jody, he's trying to teach Jody, but Jody's always giving him the culture like, bro, get out of my face, bro. I don't want to hear that shit. Like there's that one scene where he was shaving his head, and him and P was in there talking like, man, this dude be walking around there all the time, man, talking shit. He's like, yeah, I hear you, little motherfuckers.
Right.
And then he has a whole monologue about guns and butter and how to invest your money, how to waste your money, saying some real shit. And Jody's like, see that, man? He does this shit every day. He's like, what? Shuts up, because he never had nobody had to check him like that, But at the same time, let me get to the mother though. The mother, all right. I forgot what her name was, but the mom is probably the worst mother in cinematic history. Now, you talking about unlikable characters and characters that you hate in the movie. I hated her character the most.
Really?
Because she was such a hypocrite. Like, okay, the scene where she was telling Jody to leave the nest, get out, get your own thing. You know what I'm saying? You can't stay here forever. It's like, what you mean leave the nest? This grandma's house, why I gotta leave the nest? You never left the nest.
Right.
So it's like you telling me to grow up and go do my own thing, but yet you living in your mother's house.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then the whole thing where she found the weed in the garden and she blamed Jody, going off on him. But then when she found that it was Melvin, had nothing to say.
Right. Well, I think it goes back into what we're saying. It's kind of a systemic thing in a lot of these rough areas. You know what I mean? In these places where, in a similar way, while there's a young man who's not being raised by a father figure, by some sort of man, or being given some sort of male role model to kind of play off of. In a similar way, for the wife, it's like she no longer has this partner to kind of help keep her in check with things. You know what I mean? And so then she's got to kind of play both roles, and sometimes that does create this weird dynamic with situations. And sadly, she's also somebody growing up in a rough area herself. Obviously, she stayed there. So, there's the self-worth elements on her part too, like that she's willing to put up with somebody who's possibly a problem. Now, Melvin, I like what your analysis that he seems like an antagonist at first, because you think he is the antagonist of the movie at a certain point. But I like the idea that sometimes you have something come into your life that bothers you, that you think is like a problem, something that's going to come in and ruin your good vibes. But in the end, ultimately helps kind of change who you are, you know what I mean? Or helps kind of grow you. So I actually quite like that kind of thing. That's why I was mentioning from the very start that the Melvin element of this film, I think, is what works the best.
Right.
Because I think it's the most growth that Tyrese's character has by the end of the movie. But, I also, like, it kind of comes back to what we were saying before with the realistic part of things, where, like, the mother for me seemed like a realistic person growing up in this situation who's had to play both role of mother.
And that's why I didn't like her.
Right. Well, yeah. And then I could totally understand that for sure.
Yeah.
And, I think it just goes back to show more than anything in this whole movie, like relationships across the board were toxic. Like every relationship we saw an example of in this movie, toxic.
Right.
I think the movie man commented about the entire life-size womb that Tyrese had to lay in for the intro. Yeah. And the fact that that's spaced out throughout the course of the movie is so strange to me. Like that was the weirdest part of the movie. Like we could have cut out all the womb stuff, in my opinion.
Listen, I think that was the chronic, man. Sometimes when you put substances in your body, you come up with strange ideas. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know a little something about that. So yeah, Singleton was probably on that West Coast chronic, and he's like, yo, what if we put Tyrese in the fucking womb? Like the metaphor is showing him as a man child in the womb that he needs to grow up and face the world. Man, I think that'd be brilliant. I need to quit smoking this shit.
And even then, you saying it seems artistic. right? It
Mm-hmm.
seems like an
Mm-hmm.
artistic approach, and then but just seeing it in the movie and the way it was
Yeah.
intercut, and I think a lot of it also has to do with the performances. Like there was something my fiance said when she was watching it. She was like, "It's weird because there's times where you could tell that's how they were directed to act, where it felt over
Mm-hmm.
dramatic." You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right.
And then there was times where it felt subtle, like the performances felt subtle and
Mm-hmm.
real, like the scene where Melvin is taking the gun from Jody. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
thought that was a scene that really worked.
Mm-hmm.
Because going back to the whole topic of unlikable characters, because I saw that exploitation also mentioned that he's okay with a character being unlikable,
Yeah.
because I am too. Because I kind of felt that way about the main guy from, not to the fullest extent, but the main guy from Menace to Society. You feel that
King.
way about
Yeah.
him too. But
Mm-hmm.
by the time you get to the end, like you really feel for his character, and you really are sad when he gets shot up at the end of that movie. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Like that movie is impactful because it's like, fuck, like this was what that is. I'm not saying I needed the same journey, but that's what I wanted for Jody, not to die, but
Right.
like I wanted to feel like he had made some effort. So when the dude from Menace to Society is going to leave with Jada Pickett Smith and
Mm-hmm.
go and have this nice life, and he gets gunned down, like it's that for me was like the realistic sad tragedies of life, and how there are a
Right.
lot of really good people in rough areas that try to like realize, hey, listen, I've had a rough past, I want to make a difference and make a
Mm-hmm.
change. And then sometimes life halts them right there. And I think that's why Menace to Society for me really works in that kind of a direction. Whereas this
Right.
movie had so much going on, and in the end, I just think, man, it just didn't bring Jody to a place where I'll be thinking about. I'll tell you this: I'll be thinking about Baby Boy for a while, simply because it left me unsatisfied with
Mm.
his overall journey. And I saw the potential, because there's stuff
Right.
like Melvin, and there's stuff like even his mom, you know what I mean? Like it was even nice to see him at the end, like talking to his mom, like, you don't have to worry about me, I got this. It's only been a few days, so I thought that was kind of funny. But
Yeah.
I like that journey, and I just wish that the Yvette and him storyline had just been smoothed out just a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I feel you. I feel you. I mean, because well, at one point they did like really split up because what
Right.
happened? What was it that happened? Uh,
It was when
oh yeah,
Rodney, I think, shows up, right?
yeah, when Rodney shows up. Yeah, Rodney shows up. Yeah, yeah, and then she comes to the door and she's like, "Yeah, the engine broke and the car need fixing." He's like, "Hey, that ain't my problem. Like, fuck off my
Right.
doorstep." And she has
Right.
that pitiful cry in the car, which I think goes back to your, the little overactor. Like Singleton says, "Okay, let's see if we can recreate that Ricky death scene and give a good cry." She was like, "He don't love me no more. He
Right.
don't
Right.
love me no more."
But it also goes back to all the stuff we were talking about before, man. Just like the
Yeah.
sad reality that there are women like that, like she was beating his ass, then he beat her,
Mhm.
and then there's that weird whole like him giving her head while she's crying, her eyes out because
Right.
horrified of him seeing, and then at the end, after everything, she's sad that this guy that she told to get the fuck out of her life is
Mhm.
no longer in her life. So it's just that whole relationship toxic.
Yeah, it was. It was. And okay, so what about the fact that she was talking? Okay, so the Snoop character, Rodney, right? Now she's supposed to be head over heels over Jody, but at the same time, she's entertaining this guy from prison. But I guess she thinks, well, he's never getting out, so when I get bored, I can just talk to him. Um, do you think that like what do you think about the whole thing with her talking to Rodney while at the same time she's with Jody? Like, does that kind of make her? I mean, it's not technically cheating, but it's like, dude, even after Jody tells her, like, yo, put a block on my phone, like, I don't want you talking to this dude, and then she still talks to him, and then when he
It's a
shows
tough
up, she
situation.
can't get rid of him.
Yeah, it's tough because I just feel like Jody was he never gave her a reason, in my opinion, to
Hmm.
genuinely just be like fully loyal to him. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it felt genuinely like throughout the entirety of the movie, like he just never really gave her the love and the attention. Like throughout the whole course of the movie, there's so many moments where she's got to like get in front of his eyes and like see
Hmm.
him like looking at another girl, or you know what I
Right.
mean? Like she's
Smell his dick.
right, right. Well, that was hilarious, but stuff like that. But or there's like whole moments where he is like she pretty much has called him out on the fact that he's cheating, and she almost
Hmm.
starts to kind of like be okay with it, not be okay with it, but
Yeah.
she kind of subjects herself to it a little bit. She's like,
Hmm.
as long as it wasn't in my car or something like that, or as long as it
Right.
wasn't somebody I know. So she just starts to subject herself to kind of like just the bullshit he's saying and the way he's
Hmm.
going about life. So for me, like it's tough because what she's doing is not right as well. But I feel like he never gave her a true loving
Right.
environment for her to feel like I don't want to do this, which is why in the end I almost feel like I would have preferred to see Yvette kind of go further in like
Move on.
maybe even when Rodney came back, like actually accept him, you know what I mean? Like be happy to have a man in the house, again, and then realize at the end that this was worse than Jody, I guess you could say, and then Jody realized like maybe being able to. I feel like it would have almost been better for Jody to have seen more of what was happening with Rodney and Yvette. Like he hears about him trying to rape her, but like if there would have been more of him seeing that, he could have almost from the outside in been able to see like, oh man, like that's how I was treating her. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like now I realize how ugly it looks from the outside. So it would have given a little bit more growth to his character,
Yeah. If this wasn't intended to be a comedy, something went horribly awry. I can't tell you how many times I've cried. Yeah, listen, this whole movie just makes me. This movie is a comedy to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, that's not to say I don't take it seriously, because I do, because of like I said, the authenticity of it. But this movie cracks me up, bro. So many, the America's #1 condom. I'm glad you went all out. All I get is a trip to the clinic. Give me my shake, when he was at the taco place.
Yeah, I just looked it up on IMDb because I was actually curious. I didn't know. But yeah, it just says it's a crime, drama, romance, thriller. So it's technically not even within the comedy genre.
It's not even supposed to be a comedy. Wow.
Right, which is where I think that the movie is weird, right? Like that's where I think that Singleton had a lot of ideas. And you can have comedic moments in a drama, in a thriller, in a crime movie, all that stuff, like and it not be considered a comedy. Like I'm all for that, but like there's moments like where like when you have like a whole segment where Melvin is like literally ragdolling freaking Jody's
his mama.
And like not only that, they're like it's one thing to have like the scene with like him taking her in the room and like sex is happening and this, that, and the third. Like, and you can hear the loud noises where it can kind of be comedic and almost like unsettling for our character. But man, when he's like picking her up and literally doing like squats with her, like and bouncing around the room like a kangaroo, like you can't help but laugh because of it. It almost felt like a Ace Ventura kind of sex scene. You know what I mean? Like so dramatic.
Yeah, just so over the top of it. Over dramatic. Yeah. And I mean, even Snoop, you know what I'm saying? Like, even the whole Snoop thing was funny because he's supposed to be fresh out of jail, right? So, I mean, I'm pretty sure, if you read the script and you see the character of Rodney, right? And before anybody's casted, the character you see in your mind is like some big brolic looking motherfucker with braids, neck like Mike Tyson, you know what I'm saying? Very intimidating. And Snoop is the complete opposite of that. Right. Snoop's whole body is the size of my arm. You know what I'm saying? My arm's probably a little bit bigger than Snoop. So when he's walking around in his wife beater, he's trying to like manhandle Yvette, like, sit your ass down. I'll break your motherfucking face if you get up again. I'm like, dude. No, he could have put on at least like 20 pounds or something, man. Like he was so small. Right. I didn't take it seriously, but even the way he talked to the kid, when the kid was like, I want my daddy, man, fuck your punk ass daddy.
I hate you.
Yeah, I hate you. Yeah. Yeah, so I hate you too, little nigga. You ain't my son. So yeah, that whole shit with them was funny as hell until he tried to rape her. That's when I was like, okay, this shit just got serious. But prior to that, it was all comedic. Like, remember, he was sitting on the couch and Yvette would walk by, he slapped her on the ass, and she was like, ow, nigga. You will never taste this again. All of that, I guess, was meant to be serious, but yeah, I thought it was hilarious.
And I think that's kind of the problem, right? Is like I think that the movie, and I looked it up on Rotten Tomatoes too. It's got a 71 with critics on Rotten Tomato, which that's substantially higher than I'd put it personally. But it just, I guess this is a movie that definitely has people divided. I did look up some reviews online and stuff just after I saw it, just to see what people were saying. And there were some people who love this movie. Certified hood classic, all those kind of words thrown around for it. And then there's people like myself or Jacob Martin or Blacktastic that are just like, oh man, like
this movie's trash. And bro, and I think this movie and Soul Plane are the two most played movies in BET history. Like back when I used to watch BET, like I don't watch it no more. But back when I used to watch BET, like it seemed like every other hour Baby Boy was on. Edited for television. Yeah.
Which I can't even imagine is good. The edited for television.
Nah, it wasn't. Right. Yeah, they always played that, Soul Plane, or The Temptations. like that. That's all they played on BET. You know what I'm
Gotcha.
saying? So this movie is a staple in a lot of black households. You know what I mean? Like if you go to the average person around here where I stay at, and you just reenact the scene, they'll know what you're talking about.
Right.
You know, yeah.
Yeah, I could totally see, like, as I was watching it, and I think that was the thing, is like I like John Singleton, so like not knowing that this movie existed, I was very open to seeing. I was like, oh, this movie must be good or something. But yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah, well, he's talking about that same scene. Well, you know, okay, and what made that scene funny was her reaction, right? So Jody pops her, right, and she falls, and she's like, Jody, you say you never hit me. You know, and he's picking her up, he's carrying her, and she's like, get the fuck off me, Jody.
But see, that was the thing, right? Is like all that for me came across like serious, like, wow. And so, you know, it felt so uncomfortable and strange and weird when he starts like trying to like it almost felt like he was just trying to like please her like in this way and like to blind her from how disgusting of a person he is, you know?
Right.
So when she's going from like screaming and hollering and crying and looking uncomfortable into like pleasure, it was just so weird. Like I was watching the movie like what the fuck am I supposed to take from this? Is this serious? Is this a comedy? Is this like I really didn't know. But then there's stuff like Snoop Dogg trying to rape her, and it's like, okay, this movie's fucking serious as shit. But then I'm like, you know, we got Melvin doing, you know, bunny hops with, you know, and the buck, and I'm just like, dude, I don't know what the fuck to take from this movie.
Yeah. You know, I feel kind of bad now because I know you do a lot of collabs, and I know Haley watches a lot of these movies with you, so I can just imagine when you come and say, okay, Haley, we gotta watch Rashad's pick. Oh my god. What movie did he pick this time? You know, especially after this one, like Perez, is there like an uncomfortable sex scene in this movie? Because if Rashad picked it, I know it's gonna be fucking crazy.
Well, thankfully, she watches most of everything that I cover on the channel with me. Like outside of a couple movies, like here or there, that she maybe doesn't come to the movies with me to see or something. So at this point, she's sat through a lot of wildly uncomfortable movies, or just like, you know, like a lot of horror and a lot of pretty intense stuff. You know, she went and saw The Northman with me earlier this year. You know what I mean? So like, she's used to. She's watched all the A24 flicks with me and stuff. So like, she's
a good sport.
Yeah. So she like, but you know, that's why she was saying, she's like, this is uncomfortable to watch. And I think if it was uncomfortable to watch and it led to something that felt meaningful, then we probably would have both liked it a little bit more, because we're both okay with uncomfortable movies, you know. And there are movies sometimes that are really great that are just uncomfortable to watch, like Schindler's List or Passion of the Christ. Like Passion of the Christ ain't a movie that you're throwing on just for like, hey, like I just made myself a TV dinner, let me throw on the Passion of the Christ. Like that movie's like, incredible, whether you're like religious or not. But I mean, you don't want to be watching Jesus' ribs get ripped out, you know, any time of the day, you know. So it's one of those things where like you can have uncomfortable moments in movies for sure if it pays off. And it's at least like a well-made movie overall. And I just think the tone of this movie is so all over the place.
If Tupac, well, okay, well, D Movie Man, I don't know if you know, I'm assuming that you know, but yeah, Pac was the original choice for Jody. Yeah,
I would have liked to have seen that. I feel like that would have been. I think that almost would have been a far better movie.
Right, because he wrote the script right after Poetic Justice. So Poetic Justice was the first time he worked with Pac. And then from that, he said, yo, this guy's a star, so I want to write a vehicle just for him. So he wrote Baby Boy for Pac, and they were supposed to do the movie. But, of course, Pac ended up going to jail. And then so that kind of put a halt to that. And he was also supposed to be in Higher Learning. So he was supposed to be the Omar Epps character in Higher Learning. And so when Pac got out of jail, the studio said, no, he's too much trouble. Can't use him, you know, whatever. And so he was forced to cast Omar Epps instead. But then when it came time to really shoot Baby Boy, he gets killed.
Right.
So that's why in the movie you see the Tupac mural in his room, you know, because he was originally supposed to be Jody.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. I just thought, you know, whatever. Like I thought that was kind of funny. You know what I mean? Like the big Tupac mural. Whenever I see stuff like that in people's movies, like I'm always thinking, like, what kind of money you got to like slap a big like picture? Like you ever seen like Jingle All the Way? And you go to Jake Lloyd's bedroom and he's got like a fucking Marvel wall. Like I'm just like, bro, who had the money to do?
Who had the money to do that? Right. I think it definitely would have been a different movie because Pac had, you know, he didn't do a lot of movies, but he just had so much range as an actor. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, I know you wasn't the biggest fan of Juice, but one thing we can agree on was that Pac's performance was fucking
Right.
chilling. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
Like he was scary in that movie.
I remember enjoying Juice. I think that there was things about it that I wasn't crazy about overall, but like he was definitely the standout part of it, you know. And
Yeah.
another great Omar Epps performance in there too. Omar Epps is in that movie, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he's in that movie. Yeah.
And yeah, like Higher Learning, that would have been interesting as well. Like I liked Omar Epps in Higher Learning. But that would have been interesting to see
Pac,
Tupac in that role.
because I think Pac would have brought a lot more intensity. He'd have brought, because he brings intensity, he brings emotion with his performances.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, that definitely would have been. But I mean, but Tyrese, you know, for Baby Boy, Tyrese did, you know, that's the best performance I could think of his. You know, I mean, yeah, some of the Fast movies, like lately, like the last few Fast movies has been annoying, but he used to be good in the Fast movies. But I say Baby Boy is definitely his best performance by far. You know,
well, I think it's the most that I, at least personally myself, have seen him been given. You know what I mean? Like I can't think of off the top of my head. If somebody put a gun to my head right now and said, "Name 3 Tyrese-led films," I'd be dead. You know what I mean? Like before seeing Baby Boy, I would have been dead with no answers. So I can't even think of another Tyrese film that he leads as the main actor. So I guess in that way, he was given the most material here. So I do think that in a lot of ways, this is definitely his best performance that I've seen. But I think it's undercut by the writing. You know what I mean? Like I think that it's one of those situations where the actor could be fantastic, but if the writing just doesn't work for me, then it just doesn't work overall. You know, so at least in my opinion. So yeah, the standout for me for sure, Ving Rhames. I thought that he was great and ultimately played the character well. You know, plus I'm rewatching the Lilo and Stitch movies right now with my buddy Black Cat Media, and he plays
that's right.
Agent Bubbles. In those movies. So it's been funny to see him in like something like that where he's like this cartoon character, and then here's deep voice, and then here he is doing, you know, jumping jacks.
He's butt naked, cooking eggs and shit. Well, let me ask you, okay, so being that Jody was unlikable, did you get a satisfaction when Melvin knocked his ass out?
It was weird, right? Because that's kind of goes by. I did, right? But then I felt like I felt Melvin's character because he was like getting pushed to a certain point, you know. And then he does it, and then of course he's in the wrong for doing it as well. And I appreciated that he owned up to it pretty quick, Melvin. But it's this weird thing because I feel like it almost played into like as soon as he punched Jody, and a lot of what I feel was the problem with Jody's character throughout the course of the movie is that as soon as he would run his mouth and then get smacked down in some way, he was like looking up like the wounded puppy, like, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, like he's dead or something, you know? So it's almost like for me, that moment was like Jody like wanted to get punched so that his mom would run to his side and be like, oh no. So which is why when she takes Melvin's side, he gets even more emotional. So like I did like that he got punched, but I almost felt like he wanted to get punched so that he could like make a scene and be like the poor little baby that got punched. You know what I mean? Like at least that's how I seen.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know what? I didn't see it like that. I mean, you know, that's a good observation of the fact that you said that it's like he wanted to get punched, you know, but I guess he didn't anticipate if that is the case, he didn't anticipate getting hit that hard because even from the ground, he was like, because he punched the soul out of his body, like Doctor Strange soul punch, like his soul left his body, man. You know, and that was a hard scene for me to watch too, because to see his mom, you know, choose Melvin, like she's telling the Jody, like, you know, saying about it, Melvin's like, no, I'm leaving. She's like, no, Melvin, don't go.
Right.
Like, don't go. You're gonna choose this nigga over me, your flesh and blood, your child.
Right.
And like she's like, yeah, you are not a baby anymore. Like, wow. So I mean, because you know, I mean, Perez, I get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, at the end of the day, one day you're gonna leave, you're gonna have your own life, and you know, I have to have a life too. But in that situation, I mean, you know, people come and go out of your life. My child is forever. Like I'm always gonna be your parent. You're always gonna be my child. You know what I'm saying? This dude can leave tomorrow. That's just the way I think. So the fact that she chose Melvin and said don't go, even though Melvin was the reason all this happened anyway, when he planted the weed and all that, and then she blamed it on Jody. So I'm like, she had a pocket for that. That's why I made a whole video about her. About why his mom ain't shit.
Yeah, right, exactly. I need to go back and watch that video now that I've seen the movie. But yeah, like I think that goes back to what I was saying before, right? It's like there's like this massive toxic element
Yeah.
about everybody in this movie. Pretty much everybody in this movie has a fucking problem, and so his
Right.
mom is no different. She just
Yeah.
doesn't have the she also lacks the confidence in certain areas and certain things. Like I do agree with her that like you're not a child anymore. Like you are stirring your own shit at a certain point,
Right.
which I think that kind of point with Jodie's character in the end. But
Mm-hmm.
I do agree, like, like end of the day, like I'm grateful that like my mom and my dad have always chosen like my sister and I first, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
any situation growing up, if there was ever like a relationship they were in and it ever was
Mm-hmm.
going in one way or the other, we were always the priority. But so I definitely agree with that mentality.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it just leans back into like part of my problem with this movie is like everybody is like it's hard to like every single person. Like the only
Every
person
person. Yeah.
I kind of liked was Yvette, but even then she was not
Yeah.
that much better. You know what I mean? Like she was
Mm-hmm.
better, but she played into all the problems.
Right, right, right. Nah, facts, facts. And now I'm thinking about too how you said how there's scenes that happen that have nothing to do with the story, just random scenes that have nothing to do with the story. And off rip, I'm thinking about after the kids jumped him and then him and P found him, right? So the way that scene played out, even with the musical score, is like, okay, this is supposed to mean something. Because remember
Right.
when P was whipping the one kid, right? And Joey was looking on like, I'm like, I feel like this is supposed to mean something, but it doesn't. So yeah,
Right.
I
Well,
agree. Like,
that's
it's just a random scene that
right.
happens. It's like it just never gets addressed again.
Right. Well, that's like a scene where he like seems like he's realizing that like trying to get payback, here and come
Hmm.
back and try to dish out more damage than was put on him ain't
Right.
gonna really solve anything. So you kind of think, all right, cool. There's some progress being made here, but it
Hmm.
does nothing for him. It does nothing for Pete. It does nothing for those characters. And
Right.
ultimately, that and Jody out there selling, stolen, panties just does nothing for the movie whatsoever. Really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, but still, as random as that was, it was funny as shit because you thought he was gonna let the one kid go because like he was like dropping all them little niggas, right? And
Right.
gets to the one, he's like, yeah. He said, stick your chin up, man. I'm gonna give you two. He said, oh shit, this nigga got hard. Look at this nigga. You got hard? Go. You can tell us. All right, cool. Yeah, I'm not gonna hit you because you're not a coward like the rest of these little dudes, right? I ain't gonna hit you, but I'm gonna beat your ass. And you probably recognize that kid. If you've seen the first Candyman, he was a little kid from Candyman.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I saw it. I rewatched the first Candyman at the
Hmm.
beginning of this year before the new one came out. Which was that this
Right.
year? That was this year, right?
Yeah.
Or
No, it
was
was
that
last year. Last
last
year's
year? That was
Candyman. Yeah.
late last year. Okay, so yeah,
Hmm.
like um, which is crazy. I feel like that movie came out a million years ago at this point.
Yeah, we got to think this came out in 2001, and when you see him again in this movie, he's a grown man pretty much. But
Right,
yeah, that's the
right.
same little kid from Candyman. If they wanted to cast someone as Rodney from Death Row specifically, yeah, well, Dre would look the part, but if you've seen Dr. Dre's acting in Training Day, you would realize why they didn't they didn't put him in this movie. Dre is not a very good actor, but he looks the part. Yeah, they should have got somebody more physically imposing.
Right, like
And even
anybody else, like at this, like like I think they did it almost for the sense of like, and Snoop Dogg's the second face on the poster. So when you
right.
look at the movie, like you think he's gonna be a bigger part of the movie, but he really ain't.
Hmm.
He really ain't shit. You know what I mean? Like he's like kind of like a
Yeah.
looming antagonist who just gets shot down like a punk.
Yeah, yeah. Well, at the time, Snoop was large, so it's like to sell the movie. Hey, we got Snoop Dogg here.
Right, right, of
Let's
course.
let's put him on the poster. Like if you see the movie Car Wash, Car Wash, the poster, there's a big picture of Richard Pryor. So you think Richard Pryor is a big part of the movie. He only has like one scene in the movie, and that's it.
Right. Well,
And
I
it's
just
like
watched the
3 minutes.
movie like a month and some change ago now. A movie called Where Are You? And it's
Hmm.
probably right now at the top of my list for worst movies I've seen of 2022.
Oh
And
wow.
it was horrible. And the whole poster, the entire poster is just black with with Anthony Hopkins' face like taking up 90% of the poster, and then the title at
Mm,
the bottom, his name, and like
yeah.
that's it. I don't even think it says any of the other actors' names. He
Right.
is literally only in the intro, one scene in the middle, and the outro. and that's it. And he doesn't play a significant role in the movie whatsoever.
Right.
And I was just like, bro, this is like, I hate when movies do that. Like massive.
Yeah, it's like it's the oldest marketing employee in the book. You know, like you try to sell a film. You know, let's get the biggest star that we can and put them on the poster. Like another one that sticks out to me is The Faculty. When The Faculty first came out, me and all my cousins got together. Everybody wanted to see it. Well, because most of my girl cousins, they wanted to see it because Usher was in the movie. So there's like a picture of Usher in the poster. I think he's a headliner too. I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
You know, Usher starring in The Faculty, and he's like barely in the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
That's such a cheap tactic at this point. So to see it in a new movie is super frustrating. To see it in a movie in the 2000s and the 90s, it kind of makes sense.
Right. Yeah. But now it's like, come on, man. You're like, really? You're gonna trick us like that? And all right, cool. Right. You know. So so wrapping this up, man. You know, we definitely have different views in this movie, but I totally understand where you're coming from. And so, because I was ready, like before the stream, I was like, man, the fuck is Perez talking about? I'm about to drink the Zoa and I'm about to get in his ass. but then hearing you, I say, you know what? Okay, yeah, I can't argue with that. I can't argue with anything that you're saying, you know. But I guess I'm just seeing this from a biased standpoint, from the standpoint of, you know, I know this shit so much where that's why I laugh at it, because like, oh wow, yeah, I've seen it, I've lived it, you know. Hell, I could probably write my own baby boy movie, you know what I'm saying? I'll be serious because, you know, like for example, I had a fight with my ex, and this motherfucker slapped me in the face with a raw piece of chicken. So to me, that was some traumatic shit, you know what I'm saying? Because I've never got, you know, done like that before. But see, if I put it out there to an audience, they're gonna laugh at it. But to me, that was serious.
Well, I think it all comes down to like how it's presented. But yeah, I feel like any movie where somebody's getting slapped with chicken, it might come across funny.
Yeah, she had a true story, man. She was seasoning some chicken, Larry seasoning and all that stuff, and it was floured up and everything. So she just sitting there, and so she's doing this shit right here, and I'm like, and it was a drumstick too. She took that raw drumstick and bam, you see like a Larry's seasoned flour imprint in my face when she slapped me, flour and chicken juice all over the place, man. Yeah, and I'm just sitting there like.
That sucks, bro.
yeah, man. I mean, almost got hit by a car, but of course, you know, questions always asked. Well, what did you do to her? Why ask me what I did to her? How come she couldn't have done it? And you know, she just beat me getting mad.
Right.
That's the thing about men, Perez. Like, you know, like God forbid you and Haley ever fall out, man. But I guarantee if something ever happened, God forbid, something ever happened, the first thing they're gonna do is they're gonna point the finger at your ass. Even if she's in the wrong, they're gonna say, "What did you do to her?"
Yeah, that's the unfortunate side of things. You know what I mean? Like that kind of, especially with like the whole Me Too movement situation. Yeah. Like, which I'm all for. I'm all for the whole Me Too movement.
Right.
At a certain point, I feel like then there was a bunch of people just like taking advantage of it. You know what I mean? Like, where now it's like there's no bad
man. It's like I think Chris Rock summed it up well. Chris Rock says, "Women, children, and dogs are the only thing that's loved unconditionally."
Right.
Men, we get the short end of the stick every time. In that order: women, children, and dogs.
Pretty much.
They pulled that with Stomp the Yard. You know what? I've never watched Stomp the Yard, surprisingly. Had Chris Brown's entire fan base thinking, I did hear about that. Yeah, Chris Brown was supposed to be in the movie, and he was like barely in it.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of movies that do that. It's so frustrating. Like, it's just like, dude, and like don't put them on the poster. Like, you could throw them in the trailer for a second if you want to, just for the sake of like marketing. But like, you know, especially if they're gonna have like one scene, if it's gonna be super minimal, it just becomes like this. Like, why did you even market it like that? But
yeah. Well, I got one more example. The Rock. Yeah, go for it. Okay, late '90s, big fan of The Rock. WWE. The Mummy Returns. No, it was 2001. The Mummy Returns comes out. They're like, yes, The Rock is gonna be the Scorpion King, and The Mummy Returns. So. Me and my boys at Blockbuster were like, we gotta go see this, man. The Rock is gonna be kicking ass the whole movie. We thought he was gonna be the main villain going up against Brendan Fraser. So we go to see it, and he has that big ass opening action, that big ass battle in the beginning. This is gonna be the greatest movie ever. And then we don't see him again until the end, where he's a full CGI fucking Scorpion.
Right, yeah.
A terrible CGI Scorpion.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I saw Brendan Fraser talking about that recently. and how goofy that scene is, and how they didn't have enough time to finish the CG there. And
Right.
the one thing that I will say is like now this many years into the future, and I love those mummy movies. Like they used to be, man, those movies used to be on TV all the time. Like especially the
Right.
first two on TV. Like I felt like seven,
TNT, TBS, yeah.
bro, like 7 times a day. And
Yeah.
like I feel like now with how far we are, if we saw it in a movie today, it wouldn't be acceptable, right? But like now there's almost a charm to that, like CGI of that movie specifically.
Yeah.
It's not great for sure, but I still love watching that movie even when that scene comes up, just because at this point it's like kind of like a nostalgic thing. But the only thing that I'll give that a little bit difference is they at least incorporated him into the story. Like they had to the Scorpion King like bracelet and all that was like integral to the narrative. So that opening was at least served a purpose, and then even him showing up at the end served some sort of purpose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like some movies they do it and like the person like literally served zero purpose in the movie. At least with The Rock in that movie there was something, and then we ended up getting that spin-off movie with him. So I feel like there was at least some purpose.
Well, which is a guilty pleasure for me. I'm one of the few people on this planet that actually enjoys the Scorpion King movie.
I like the Scorpion King movie too. Like it's not like great, but it's kind of like reminds me of like just like that early 2000s. Like it reminds me of like that little era where we had a lot of these movies that like took place in a lot of sandy locations, stuff like this, or like the Chronicle of Riddick with Vin Diesel and stuff like that. It was like a very specific era of movies.
Yeah, good times, man, good times. So yeah, wrapping it up, I give Baby Boy an A. I can't give it an A plus just because as much as I love this movie, I can't give it an A plus because of some of the gripes that you had with it, and plus the mom and certain things that happen where I'm like, okay, we could kind of do without that. But A is what I give it. I could watch this movie over and over again. I can damn near quote the whole movie verbatim, from beginning to end.
Right. Like, that much I was impressed by throughout this whole video.
Yeah, I know this movie very well. Especially if you get some alcohol in me, I could probably recite the whole. There's a few movies I could recite the whole thing, and this is one of them. This, Menace, New Jack City, especially New Jack City, Rocky 3. Yeah, probably one of my favorite scenes to recite is in Menace, the Samuel L. Jackson scene. I love reenacting that.
Right. Are you talking about the scene at the table?
Well, yeah, at the card table. Yeah. Fuck you, Tat. Who you think you is, Ron O'Neal or something? Talk about I better pay else. Yo, bitch, nigga. What you gonna do? Absolutely love, because dude, it's just something funny about how you have a gun pointed at you, right? And you still talking shit, and there's a gun pointed at you about to blow your head off, and you're like, no, squeeze that shit, man. I'm supposed to be scared. You got a pistol, nigga? I just spent 5 years in the joint. I told you I pay your monkey ass when I feel like it. Better suck my dick,
And he committed to that performance, man. It's so good.
Yeah, like the dog, who does that, man? That's gotta be the ballsiest thing in the world, man. That's what I call knowing nothing of the back down. There's some people that just know nothing of the back down, even when they're about to get messed up. Where's Plastic looking? See, oh, it's about the Scorpion King. Okay, I saw that with the deep fake. Yeah. Would you be opposed, Perez? Would you be opposed to them, like, kind of doing like what Lucas did with the Star Wars movies, do like a special edition where they fix the CG?
No, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I'd be open to it for sure, because anything to like make it better. But I what I was saying before is kind of like what I agree, kind of like with Brendan Fraser, is like certain things just have a charm. Like the prequel Star Wars movies by today's standards, so much of the CG doesn't look good. The guns and the Phantom Menace, and there's so many little things that don't look fantastic, but it's part of the charm of it for me. Just like going back and like I've never been a huge fan, even though I watch all those different versions and stuff. I've never been a huge fan of all the CG additions that they add to like even the original trilogy of Star Wars. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain point where you're like, okay, just like they wanted to fit shit on screen. But there's a charm to like, older CG, when they were still figuring it out. And it's nice when you saw a movie like Terminator 2 or Jurassic Park that had CG that was like, that still looks just as good as CG today for most cases, But it's funny to me when I go back and watch movies that have like special effects that don't work 100%. One of my next collab videos I'm dropping on my channel is for the 1954 Creature from the Black Lagoon, and I just gave that a rewatch like 2 days ago. And yeah, you know, like it's also fun for me to go back and see the different decades and how the special effects, both practical and digital, were, you know what I mean? And so like going back and seeing that movie, like a lot of it still works for a movie from the 50s, right? And you got this guy in the suit, the Gillman suit still works, but there's moments like the face where it's just like super stiff and like the eyes are lifeless, you know what I mean? And there's elements about it that are just so goofy. So yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing that though for something like the Scorpion King, because a lot of that movie, where that movie shines, is in its practical effects. Like that's what makes the first one and the second one, like the costume design and all the weapons and like the temples and stuff that they're in, the tombs. So you know, if they fix the CGI for the Scorpion King, I wouldn't even mind if they fixed the CGI on like the little monkey creatures that are like walking around with spears, you know, when they're running through the forest. Like if they fix the CG for that movie, I'd be for it for sure, because I think the first movie, you know, some of the CG doesn't work, but it's still
more effective than, I mean, well, that's what kind of tanked the movie. That's what tanked The Mummy Returns was, because I remember watching it in the theater and all of us loving it, and then it was like this build up the whole time where you're waiting for The Rock to come back, you know, because they kept hyping up the Scorpion King. So finally, when we saw him, everybody just bust out laughing. Everybody that I came with, we were laughing at the screen like, are you fucking serious right now? Even back at that time, we're like, yo, are you serious right now? Dog, this is the worst thing ever. And it tanked the whole movie. So going back and rewatching it, I enjoyed it more. But at that time, I was like, yo, we were talking cash shit the whole time going back on the bus. Like, man, did you see that? But they look like a cartoon, you know?
Yeah, that's that struggle of that early 2000s, late 90s CG, man. It's like certain things just did not look good. If you didn't have the money and the time to finish the product, like with the Star Wars prequels, they tend to get a lot of shit, but for the most part, a lot of those movies still look really good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, some of the CG is not great. Some of the fully CG, like aliens and stuff like that, look a little cartoony at times. But like for the most part, a lot of that still looks good. But when you watch like random movies or something that had like a big set piece, like one individual CG thing, like some of that stuff doesn't always pan out. And I've always been a proponent, or like I've always been a like an advocate for like the CG should fit the tone of the movie, right? So when I watch Men in Black, I don't mind that big roach creature at the end looks like cartoony, because the movie for me feels like a live action cartoon in a lot of ways, you know. So I think it depends on the movie, but in the case of that movie, I think the downside is how good the practical effects are in The Mummy Returns, and then you get to the CG rock at the end, and it's like, okay, like the switch between the two is crazy, especially like if you're a fan of like 80s movies and stuff like that, where like practical effects were at their height, in my opinion, you know.
Right. That's why I mean, I'm glad they fixed it. Like that's what I hated when Steven Spielberg tried to fix E.T. Like there was a 2002 version of E.T. where he swapped out probably like 50% of the practical effects and put CG in there instead. But it just it took me out of the movie completely. You know, I'm like, okay, I know he thinks he's fixed this, but it just this doesn't feel like E.T. You know, Yeah, I like stiff moving E.T. where you can tell it's a puppet. That's the beauty of the movie. You know, leave it. So I had a double disc of that movie, and I watched that special edition one time and just kind of like never watched it again.
You
know?
Yeah.
And
I know what you mean. I've seen that edition too, and it's it just creates a lesser movie. You know, like for me, like Jurassic Park is one of my favorite franchises of all time. When I was a kid, before I got into like movies like super heavily, like beyond like the franchises like Star Wars and Jurassic Park that I really love, and before I even got into music and different things, I always wanted to be a paleontologist when I was a kid, because I loved Dr. Alan Grant, and I loved the first 3 movies so much. Like I loved them as a kid. Part of what made those movies so great were the animatronics. I mean, I was always completely captivated by like the T-Rex scene from the first film, the T-Rex scene from the second film with the 2 T-Rex, and just so many other scenes like that were with these practical dinosaurs that just looked good. You know, the up close shots of the raptor. So much of those, you know, there was CG in there, but so much of those scenes looked and were so memorable to me because of like the work put into like creating something physical. You know, that's why I know that we both love like slasher films, because even if they're terrible narratively, there's so much that goes into like these kills and like the blood and the guts and the gore. That's why I love things like the Saw franchise as well, at least the beginning portion of the franchise, because like these practical kills are so well done, you know. And so then my struggle with like the new Jurassic Park movies, you know, is like beyond the story is like it sucks that we've moved away from practical animatronics as much, you know, like the first Jurassic World movie only has one scene with a practical dinosaur, which is when like the big long necks, I think it's the Brachiosaurus, is on the floor that like the Indominus Rex had just been tearing them up, and they go up and like have like a nice like solemn moment with it. That's the only practical dinosaur in that movie. Now, thankfully, the CG in the movie looks good, but there was such a lack of the practical dinosaurs in the new trilogy that they did that it took me out of it. Outside of the story, also not being the greatest with each installment, but
it took a lot of the magic away that that you felt with that first one, because because with a practical effect, it's like as you like to say, it's tangible, like it's organic, you can touch it, But then they use the CG when they absolutely have to, but it blends in so well, it's seamless. But that first Jurassic World, though I did dig it, but to me it felt more like just a creature feature as opposed to the first Jurassic Park was just like a fucking, I guess, like a spectacle or just fucking magical, you know what I'm saying? And Jurassic World was like, Jurassic World kind of belongs in the same category as like King Kong or like those movies. Godzilla.
It's like a Godzilla movie, it's like a monster movie, which the first movie has the monster movie element to it, but it's more of like a drama. It's more of like an actual thriller. And they do allow, it's like the only movie in the franchise, maybe the first three in general, but like specifically the first one where you have like this sense of awe with the
that's the term I was looking for. Yeah, sense of awe. Thank you.
Right. And so like when you have scenes like the T-Rex scene where he's coming through the freaking top, and like you're tense while you're watching it. Till this day, when I watched that scene, and I rewatched it before I rewatched all the Jurassic Park movies before the newest one came out just earlier this year, and it was just so great to revisit those scenes with all the practical dinosaurs because it adds to the movie, man. Like I think about the third movie when the plane crashes in the tree.
Yeah.
And the Spinosaurus rips the front of it open. And what's it called? One of the dudes, the pilot, the black dude, he gets his leg chomped on and he gets ripped out. But he was in a real practical dinosaur's mouth. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like the scene is tense, And then they had the real practical dinosaur like put the hands when it lands on the ground. It like the hands will grab onto it as they rolled it. Like it's just got so many moments. Yeah. That just worked. And if I was in front of that thing in person, I always think, man, like if I was ever to act in something, acting off of something like that would be so good. Another good example is like the Lord of the Rings movies. I feel like if I ever had to act afraid of an orc actor, I wouldn't really need much. I wouldn't need much to be afraid of, because the makeup of those orcs in the Lord of the Rings franchise is so good. So when you go to the Hobbit franchise and most of the orcs and the Uruk-hai are CG, it just takes away from a little bit of that magic, which is why I've loved a lot of the new Star Wars stuff too, man. Like when we got to like the Force Awakens, and there's a lot of CG and stuff, but you got like all these practical locations and practical aliens and shit walking in the background, and even something like all the new shows in general have like really done a good job with like practical sets and locations. Andor, like I don't know if you finished the first season of Andor, but like the practical sets and locations and costume design, like just such an attention to detail that's always gonna captivate me more than like the big CG spectacle, which I do love too. Which I'm a sucker for CG spectacle as well. But,
Well, did you stick around for the? Because we had a whole conversation about that yesterday. Was it yesterday? Or day before yesterday with Mike's Z Talks. We had a whole conversation about that, and the whole time I'm thinking, I said, I wonder if Perez is listening to this, because they was taking a massive shit on Andor, and they were taking it. And I think it was Ryan said he hated Force Awakens, which is like a hot take, because even if you don't really care for the sequel trilogy, I think The Force Awakens is the most universally loved out of all of those. And he was like, I hate The Force Awakens. I said, even over Rise of Skywalker? Yes, I fuck that movie. I'm like, I wonder if Perez is listening to this.
No, I wasn't listening, but I highly disagree. Yeah, I think The Force Awakens for me, it's probably one of the best like paced Star Wars films. Like it's one of the
Right.
easiest to watch. It's well paced. It's exciting. It's
Mhm.
energetic. It's I think it's definitely one of the best ones. But as far as Andor, honestly, a lot of the people that I've talked to who didn't like Andor said, I
Mhm.
watched like the first 2-3 episodes and I wasn't really blown away. It's like,
Right.
I hate to put it this way, but like they dropped the first 3 episodes when the season came out. Instead of
Right.
dropping it episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, they dropped the first 3 episodes because those first 3 episodes almost like play like a movie where it
Mhm.
really sets up everything that's going on. They set up a lot of intrigue. It's a much slower show.
Right.
But it's got much more of a tone of like a Game of Thrones or a House of Cards or something like that. It's not trying to be like the Luke Skywalker,
Yeah,
Yoda's
yeah.
here, and oh my God, Palpatine again. It's it's far more about the intrigue and new characters and new stuff going on. And it's a great political thriller in the Star Wars universe. I think any
Okay.
Star Wars fan who really loves Star Wars, in my opinion, if you sit in through and watch the series, there's just no way episode by episode that even if you can admit that maybe the show's a little slower than your taste.
Mhm.
There's no way you can deny the really good writing, acting, and the payoff of how the season ends. And a lot of the
Okay.
people I've talked to who didn't like it, they didn't even make it past the first 2 or 3 episodes. And
Oh,
for
wow.
me, it's after that that it really picks up, man. Like, how much of it have you watched? Have you watched any?
I haven't watched any of them yet, but I have
Yeah.
time today though, because I don't have to work until 6.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have time to check out a couple episodes. I mean, you definitely sold me on it. And it's funny. Me and Jacob did a stream, and Jacob felt the opposite. Jacob was like, he said, I tried watching the first 2 episodes and it bored me. Couldn't get into it. Rashad, you fall asleep on movies. You're gonna fall asleep on this. Don't watch it.
No, man. I think it's a missed opportunity for a lot of Star Wars fans who are
Yeah.
not watching it. Genuinely, like anybody. I mean, and most people I've talked. I mean, I don't know anybody who has seen the whole season and said I didn't
Mhm.
like it. Like everybody that
Okay.
I mean, I'm sure there are people that don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. If you're watching this
Yeah.
and you didn't like it, maybe it wasn't for you. But for me, in terms of like being a prequel to Rogue One, but also just being like a political thriller in Star Wars, no Force,
Mhm.
no Jedi, no lightsabers, just something that's
Right.
just far more grounded, and less about the action. But when the action comes, it's really good. Man, I just thought that it really, really embraced the oppression of the Empire. Like this, for me, that's what this show was all about. Was really showing the oppression of the Empire on the everyday person.
Mhm.
And man, I just thought that it handled it so well. There's a whole prison sequence in the last half of the season that is some of the best Star Wars I've ever seen put to screen. That's all I'll say. I
Really?
think
Okay.
once you get further, you got Andy Serkis shows up in the show later on. He plays a really pivotal character in the show, and I just felt like the first part. I will admit the first 3 episodes are a little slow because they're setting all the pieces. There's a lot of characters. There's a lot of
Mhm.
things going on, and the show is not interested in being an action-packed thing. But man, the last half of that show for me, the rest of it, just all the intrigue it was setting up paid off. You know what I mean? In the
Okay.
end,
Okay.
and yeah, it's only going to be 2 seasons. They already announced that, just 2 seasons. Second season is going to lead straight into Rogue One, which has me hyped. But
Okay,
man, I just
so basically, the
yeah.
show is like the origin of the rebellion, right? So how the rebellion got started.
Kind of, because we've already seen that in Star Wars Rebels and other stuff
Mhm.
too. But like, this is far more about Andor's journey into the rebellion, and I think more than anything, when we meet his character in Rogue One, he's just killing people, for the
Mhm.
sake of the rebellion. And this show really touches on I think even Star Wars Rebels tends to like all our characters are kind of heroes. You know what I mean?
Right.
This show really highlights the fact that to fight the Empire, there's got to be people in this fight that are doing dirty shit. And I think that
Okay.
that's what I liked about the show is it doesn't hold back on that level. This is a show showing the oppression of the Empire on the everyday people. And there's a discussion in the show from multiple characters of the idea of like, well, what is there to worry about if you're not doing anything wrong? But there
Mhm.
are others on the other side that say, well, whose definition of wrong are we going off of? And this show
Okay.
really highlights how even just being in the wrong place at the wrong time, not even having committed a crime, the Empire doesn't care. You know what I mean? They're going to oppress you if they want to oppress you. And I think
Hmm.
that this show handled that so well. Where you have this,
Intriguing.
this this huge element of like the idea of like who is in the crosshairs of the Empire, and I think more than anything realizing that everybody's in the crosshairs of the Empire if you even say or do anything they don't like, or if you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time and they decide that you're the bad guy. And I think that the show handled that really, really well.
Intriguing. Okay, well, I'm sold. I'm sold. Okay, so I just have to drink me a Zoa and hopefully don't fall asleep.
Just take your
So
time with it. Watch through it.
yeah,
It is a slower paced Star Wars show. This isn't interesting. It's not about the big fanfare and the action,
mhm,
but it does have that stuff. And when it does pop off with the action, it's super engaging.
it's good. Okay, no doubt, man. So I guess we're gonna wrap this up, man. Yeah. So I gave Baby Boy an A. Well, I know you really don't have a grading system, right? You don't really grade.
Not really, not on my
Right.
channel, but I've been
Okay.
doing Letterbox a lot more in the last few months. So on Letterbox, I gave it a 2.5 stars out of 5.
Man.
So
Well,
that's
you know what?
middle of the
I
road.
can live with that. I can live with that. At least it wasn't a 1 star. You said, man, fuck this movie.
No, no,
And
no. There was too much good in the movie, and I think that's kind of come back to all the confliction we were talking about
mm,
earlier as far as my feelings on this movie.
okay, okay. Well, our next collab is gonna be Well, what's the next Harry Potter movie after Goblet of Fire?
I gotta check what I always forget what the next one is in terms of the
Yeah.
title. I'll tell you right now. But we're doing Harry Potter 5 next.
Okay.
Just dropped the fourth movie review of Goblet of Fire with Rashad
Mm,
on my channel just a couple of days ago. I also dropped a review for Violent Night, which I know that Rashad was not a huge fan of. I haven't seen your review, but based on your title, I'm assuming you weren't a fan of it. I'm going to check out your review. I was a fan of Violent Night,
okay.
but my review is up. I'll be dropping a review for Creature from the Black Lagoon, like I mentioned, in just a couple of days, as well as my review for Land Before Time 4 with our buddy Mike from Did You See That? And the next
Nice.
movie is Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix, or Order of the
Order of the
Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Right.
Well, did somebody say? I could have sworn I heard somebody say that was probably the worst one.
I think it's going to depend on your taste. Like I think at
Okay.
this point, you'll just knowing your taste. I feel like the first two will probably remain your least favorites, just because we never get back to that kiddie vibe from here on
Okay.
out. And
Okay.
the further we get into this, the darker it gets. So the
Nice.
next few movies, because there's 8 of them all together. Once we get to like at this point with 5, 6, 7, 8, especially the last two, it's just really dark. Like the last two movies are substantially darker. So hopefully by the time we get to the end, you have a better perspective on the franchise. But either way, I've been having a lot of fun covering them. What's my next movie for your channel?
You know what? I have to have some drinks and think about that one
All right.
because like even during the stream, I'm like, what can I give Perez next? Because I know I've been giving you like a lot of black films to watch and gangster movies. And I said, you know what? I said I want to give him a break from all that stuff and just give him something else. And nothing has been coming to mind. Actually, I don't know if it was you, Jacob, or Mike. Have you seen Tropic Thunder?
Yeah, I've seen Tropic Thunder. Yeah,
you seen Tropic Thunder? Okay, now because I want to cover that with somebody that hasn't seen the movie because the shock factor is just so like that movie you can't get away with that now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, I want somebody to cover that's never seen it. So that might have been Mike things. Yeah, Mike ain't seen shit. I should
really
like
isn't shit, bro. I know he just posted his Gremlins review and he was like first time viewing. I mean, I've seen Gremlins and Gremlins 2. I feel like 20 times each.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy to like hear like all the stuff that he's never seen. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
It's crazy to me that his favorite movies are Back to the Future from such a great era of movies, but he hasn't seen half the movies from that era.
I know. I want to do a segment on the channel called "Mike Ain't Seen Shit" and just have him on there.
Pretty much, man.
Because we're supposed to be covering. We're doing a double feature review next. So sometime this week coming up, we're going to be covering Predator and The Running Man because he hasn't seen any of those. And I'm like, dude, you haven't seen Predator?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's good. That's gonna be interesting. So yeah, after a couple of drinks, because once the alcohol kicks in, my brain goes to working better. I'm like, okay, I think I might have your next movie by then. But yeah, I definitely want to cover Tropic Thunder because I've been wanting to review that on my channel for a long time. But I want to watch with somebody that hasn't seen it because
right.
I want to see the reaction to the Robert Downey Jr. character.
right. Yeah, that's definitely something else for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So also to those that's still watching, and if you're still watching the replay, I put Perez's link in the description. So check him out, Anthony A. Perez. Talks about movies like myself. We have very different views of movies, but at the same time, that mutual respect of okay, we may disagree on a lot of shit, but I know where you're coming from. You know where I'm coming from. We just agree to disagree a lot of times. And a few times you get my pressure up. And I know sometimes I get your pressure up too, man. But that's the beauty of this thing we call movie criticism. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, make sure you check him out. Tell him I sent you. And that's it. And that's all. But anything else you want to add before you check out of here?
Nah, bro, I gotta take a piss.
Hey, say less, say less. All right, so we out. Rashad G, Anthony Perez signing out. See you on the next video.
Later, y'all.
Come on. Oh shit.
No, you're good, bro.
That 2